And men can be women these days.
Men can't be women if they actively identify as men. That's not a thing.
I currently identify as a man.
Okay, then you're a man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but Jubilee just dropped another spicy debate on feminism, and Hannah and I decided to react.
Couldn't help ourselves, but I have to say, in watching this compared to the other one that we reacted to recently, which was a Vice panel on very similar subjects, I thought this one was much better executed. It just had a lot more, I don't know, meatier subjects. I thought it had much more serious panelists as a whole, like on both sides, right? Both the feminists and the anti-feminists, I thought, brought their A game a bit more and just had a little bit less unhinged takes, or less fringy takes, rather, than the other panels.
Let's just start with the kind of basic concept here. Should everyone be a feminist? What even is feminism? Take a listen.
If you're a woman, you should be a feminist.
I think the concept of anti-feminism is like counterintuitive as a woman. Like everyone should want equality of the sexes, you know? Everyone should want to have the same education level, the same all these things in a position and still make as much as a person who identifies as male.
So Hannah, I don't know about you, but my take on it is like, if you just define feminism in the belief that men and women should be treated equally, pretty much everyone would be a feminist. Yeah, the problem is it's taken on a lot of connotations that are very political, very left-wing, anti-due process, certain positions on abortion, some views of gender. It's taken on a lot more baggage than that, and that's what I think these people aren't realizing.
I think that's right. I also want to say that, like, I too have really struggled with this basic definition throughout my life. I grew up in what I would call a very trad, regressive mind system. In Southern Baptist culture, I don't believe that they treat women equally. Like in the church that I grew up in, women cannot be pastors, for example. You're taught that you can't teach men, that you don't have the spiritual authority to be a leader in that capacity. And when I look back on some of that now, I was really indoctrinated by that growing up and sort of like had that conditioning to where if you had asked me all the way through college if I was a feminist, I would have knee-jerk responded like, no, absolutely not, because it was just so frowned upon. It was so like unattractive to men, which is all you want to be when you're like a young woman, right? Like it was so looked down upon that like I would have ran all the way away from it just because of those kind of connotations, both in the Deep South and in my religion, that you didn't want to be seen that way. Feminists were painted as like ugly women who couldn't get a man, women who were bitter. And so it really prevented me from exploring just the ideology. And I'm not alone in that. I think that's very common. As I aged and I sort of started just to learn innately more what the basic definition of feminism is, which is fighting for the equality of the sexes. It's like, this is the most obvious thing in the world. Everybody should be in favor of this. And there certainly are and have been throughout history reasons that this has been necessary. And
but is that still what feminism is today?
Well, I want to get into that in a minute, but I want to sort of say, like, this is a struggle throughout both this film we're going to watch and also previous ones we've seen. We're like, we keep getting away from basic definitions, and we can talk about maybe how things have gotten convoluted in this sphere, but the basic definition of feminism remains the basic definition of feminism. And I think that it is necessary because, again, in the demographic I grew up in, which is still the largest religious denomination in this country, they would say that I don't have the ability to be a leader. I'm sorry, that's bogus. I have better leadership qualities than the vast majority of men I've ever come across. And the fact that there are still people who think in this way, that women and men, because of their gender, have different just intellectual skill sets, right? We can talk about the difference in physical skill sets and some of those basic biological differences, but to say that women are somehow less positioned to be in certain leadership capacities is bogus, and we need to combat some of those sorts of mentalities. So in that sense, I do consider myself a feminist, and I do think that everybody should be a feminist. And in doing that, I also still fight for men in many spaces too, right? I've actually given testimony before the U.S. Senate about this, about how government continues to present barriers to opportunity for both women and men. And so if we're going to fight for women, we have to fight for men. And I think that that is how we should define feminism. But as you pointed out, it's not always that black and white.
Yeah, so I come at it from the opposite background, where it's like feminism was viewed positively, right? Coming in very liberal New England growing up. But I always agreed with what you define feminism as, belief in the equality of the sexes under law and equal treatment. Of course, I think men and women can both be leaders. I don't think the sexes are the same or that sex is meaningless. And the problem is I want to identify as a feminist, but then I see the face of modern feminism and I'm repulsed in very many ways. This next clip kind of reveals why.
Define woman. Go, please.
One of you.
A person who their internal idea of what they are is a woman.
Terrible definition. Coming from a lesbian, that destroys the very concept of our sexual orientation. Just saying that it's an idea.
Why?
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 Because you can't be connected and sexually attracted to somebody's brain.
So again, we've seen this. Modern leftist feminists today are just incoherent. They can't even tell you what a woman is. And it's just like this postmodern claptrap of identity and feelings and whatever that has no basis in like reality. And so I'm a little intellectually repulsed by that.
I mean, I thought Ariel, who we should say is a mutual friend of both of ours, we like Ariel a lot, but she just absolutely came in and mic dropped. I mean, she came in so hot in this, and I loved it because she spoke to this problem in a way that I think only a lesbian really can, and she's 100% right? Like, for me, I don't feel trampled on when it comes to a lot of the trans issues that are coming about. It doesn't really impact me one way or another as a woman. Like, I know some women say they feel like they're being erased, or like the end goals of feminism are being erased when you basically can't even define what is a woman. But I think Ariel summarized it really well. Like, if you're really getting down to it, this impacts people's sexual orientation. And to say that a woman can be anybody who decides they're a woman, like, no, I don't think that's true. And it's for this reason I've actually done a lot of processing around this. I've talked to our other good friend Sarah, who is trans, about this, who I often go to, Sarah Higdon, for information or just to kind of parse some of this out. And this is why she would always say, like, she's a trans woman. And she wouldn't actually want to use the same classification as woman. And I think it maybe is important to distinguish between those two lived experiences and realities and just different barriers that both groups face in the world, right? Like, I will never have the experience as a trans woman. A trans woman will never have the same experience as me of going through puberty, of maybe even being in
pregnant,
danger from men, of getting pregnant. Yes, there are very different lived experiences. So I love trans women. I support them. But I think that when you do start to try to just lump everything into one, it does undermine the end goals. And I think it just makes everything confusing, as you can tell by these.
Yeah, there was another moment in here too where one of the woke feminists was saying trans women are women. And then Ariel saying, well, trans women are trans women, which is different than just of a cisgender woman, right? These are different things. And that should be okay to acknowledge. But they're like, no, trans women are women. Well, and there was one moment, which I was planning on playing a little later, but I might as well queue up now because it fits in nicely here, where Isabella, one of the anti-feminists, said, well, then I identify as a man, and chaos ensued.
And men can be women these days.
Men can't be women if they actively identify as men. That's not a thing.
I currently identify as a man.
Okay, then you're a man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But, all right, so she's being facetious here, but I think it actually does drive home the point, which is that they don't even know how to define a trans woman, right? Like, somebody could just say, well, I'm a man or I'm a woman, and not even necessarily have body dysmorphia, not even necessarily have begun the process of transitioning, and yet they're going to say, well, that's a woman too. And it's like, no, that actually is not any way to actually move about the world. We have to have definitions of things. And I think this is something you often see in like Marxist theory, progressive theory, where they want to basically erase basic vocabulary and meanings and definitions and structures. They want everything to sort of blur together. And eventually they kind of want everybody to look and be exact same and have the exact equal same outcomes. Like, that is where they're trying to go. And I think this actually is part of feeding into that, is sort of erasing these identifiers and basic like individual characteristics. And I think that makes no sense. And I think it's right to push back and say, like, no, there are actual definitions to the world. There are borders and boundaries and structures that are important to acknowledge. And if you actually do want to talk about issues that impact trans women, let's talk about it. If you want to talk about issues that impact women, let's talk about it. If you want to talk about issues that impact men, let's talk about it. But we have to have these basic definitions in order to have a conversation at all. Otherwise, it's just pure chaos.
I have to point out the irony here too, because several of these feminist panelists who are like lecturing others about how they know the real definition of womanhood that's fluid and how feminism is this and that, actually aren't identifying as women, apparently. Let's listen to this one.
By the way, I am genderqueer myself. I don't actually identify as a woman. It's really important that those of us who do have privileges like speak up for trans women in the community, especially because they're the most at risk for hate crimes.
I also want to just level set and say that we are having this conversation without trans women, right? We are sitting here today having
Do we
that
know that?
conversation without
For sure?
consent.
I identify as
She's on a
trans.
hold on. She identifies as non-binary, and she's on a feminist panel.
my pronouns-
So maybe she doesn't belong here either.
So I agree with Ariel. Why the heck are these people here if they don't identify as female or women and they're not women, but they're here at this feminism debate for women? Make it make sense, because the math doesn't math for me.
I can't make it make sense. And Ariel also says at one point that basically she thinks when we're talking about female spaces that there should be a difference. And it's not in any way dehumanizing to trans people, as some of these other people on the left try to claim on this panel. It's not taking away their humanity or saying that they shouldn't have a space. It's saying, like, there is a difference, right? And when we're getting into these spaces of talking about women and women's issues, then it would be weird if you showed up and started talking about women and women's issues. So why is it not weird if somebody who doesn't identify as a woman is there?
I don't know. I think they should have had me on the debate. I would have been great. No, people would be like, why is a dude here? Well, yeah. Why is it they, them here? Like,
and also at another point in this panel, they start talking about how only women should be making laws that are addressing women's
yes. Yes.
And then I'm like, one, nobody should be making laws that tell other people how to maneuver through their bodies. Like, that's actually what the base take is. But secondarily, you guys can't even define who is a woman. How are you going to say who's going to make the laws defining women's bodies? What?
And they're saying only women should make laws defining women's bodies, but non-women that they're saying they don't identify as women should be in the conversation about womanhood and feminism. Make it make sense.
It doesn't. This ideology, this camp of the political system is completely devoid of basic logic and common sense, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. I'm really tired of it. Like, I'm a very nuanced person. I'm a very open person. I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to learning. I change my mind on things all the time. This is untenable.
They're also just science deniers. I have to roll this one clip. She's saying biology doesn't exist and isn't real, and that's what the scientists think. Take a listen.
You guys keep saying that there's a biological reality of male and female. Scientists do not agree with you.
Scientists that you choose to agree with. I mean, you can find a study and a scientist to back up anything you want to prove these days.
I choose to do peer-reviewed studies and not ones that are backed by political agenda. And I'm sorry that my peer-reviewed studies tend to agree with the fact that trans women are women and that biology, it does not exist in a binary. Never has and it never will.
So anybody who's cracked open a basic biology textbook knows this is not true, right? Any doctor in America will tell you that with rare exceptions, humans are male or female genetically. There's exceptions to everything, but its sex is dimorphic. Like, this is basic science. They're gaslighting us. They're denying reality. And then they claim there's studies or whatever. No, there's not. And it's insane to me how high on a horse they can get while just gaslighting us on basic reality.
They're also just so programmed. Like, I don't believe any of these people have actually read any science or data. Like, they're not well-versed people. They're just sort of robots that regurgitate whatever the party talking point is. And I don't even think they understand where they're trying to get, because the end goal when it comes to trans issues should have been acceptance, equality under the law, period. And that's really,
just leave them alone. Let them live their life.
The same as anybody else. And I am here for that all day long. I love trans people. Treat them well. Treat them with kindness. Like, they should be treated equally. Why do we have to go beyond that? That's where it should end. Instead, they're trying to come in and tell you that no, unless you accept the fact that there are no differences between these people and these people, then you're a bigot and you hate trans people and you're an agent of oppression. No, you're asking people to ignore their own reality and logic, and I think that that's always anything that does that is dangerous. I said that about religion growing up. I remember pushing back one time on my parents and saying, if you're going to ask me to ignore my own logic that my brain is giving me, that my God gave me in my head to use, then this isn't the camp for me. That's not a religion I'm going to be a part of, because I think that that's an essential component of what it means to be alive and how you should move through the world and how you should use the gifts and talents you've been given. And that's true for political ideology too. Anything that's asking you to shut your eyes and ignore that 1 + 1 is 2 is a dangerous ideology that will ask you to ignore all other kinds of evils and other things down the road. It's sort of a foot in the door, right, to other things. And I think that we need to be aware of that, because it certainly doesn't end here. This is not something where it's just their end all be all goal is for you to accept that trans women or trans men are the same as men or women. No, their end all be all goal is to get it to where they can say 1 + 1 = 5 and you go, yes sir, yes sir. That's what's happening here.
So I want to shift gears slightly and go to an interesting part where they said that feminists don't appreciate all men do for society. Take a listen.
Feminists don't appreciate all that men do for society.
I mean, I've got a lot to say about this. Feminists just demonize men. They hate men. All men are trash. They say they hate men while simultaneously trying to become men. They hate them for having power and the patriarchy, so they're trying to overtake it. But a lot of women will talk about rape culture. But guess what? Guess who's going to protect you from bad people? A man. Women are nurturers. We need men.
It's as simple as that. It's a God-given right for men to exist the way they were assigned to exist. We need men. It's very simple. We need men to procreate. We need men to provide. We need men to produce. We need men to go to war and die. We need men. It's so bad now that they're so scared of us. They're terrified all the time. I go on dates with men and they're like, am I allowed to open the door? Can I not open the door? Can I touch it? Can I pull the chair out? What can I do? And they're shaking, they're sweating. And you're just like, be yourself. It's okay. They're so afraid of doing anything wrong. So much so they're now the most lonely demographic in the world, right? Like they straight white men, I heard, are now the most lonely because they just creating incels, They don't want to leave their apartment or their house because they're so afraid of women.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but I actually think there's some truth to this. We can talk about all the ways women still have disadvantage, and I'm open to that. But it is true that 95% or more of firefighters are men? What percentage of soldiers are men? What percentage of construction workers are men? There is some truth to the idea that we have to give men credit and maybe in some ways don't anymore, kind of in the modern feminism view.
I think this was probably the meatiest part of the whole segment. I thought there were so many pieces to touch on just in that 2-minute segment that I want to make sure we address. But first and foremost, I do think oftentimes third wave feminism veers into man-hating, and it doesn't look to advance the equality of both sexes. It more so wants women to surpass men, eclipse men. There's a lot of people who hate men, and I have to be honest, there are times where I get really tired of men in society, just because as a woman, you deal with a lot of crap. But I also have to say, on the other hand, and this is 95% of my experience, I have wonderful men in my life. My dad, my brothers are stand-up, amazing, almost superhuman men. They are so good. I really can't even always find the vocabulary to express my experience of growing up with them. I have male friends like you, my friend Drew, who are also just stand-up, amazing, highly character-driven people. And the list goes on, right? And I think that is predominantly been my experience. And so I think it's really important for that to be portrayed more. So often what we're shown in pop culture or on social media is the worst of men, people like Andrew Tate, and you're seeing that kind of thing over and over, and it can make you start to knee-jerk, just men are trash, men are awful, right? But that's not how most men are. And so we have to be really careful about the messages that are being programmed into our own minds, because I think it's really easy to sort of slip into that mentality of just putting men down and ignoring all of the really great things men do for society. We do need men. Men do have biological differences. They are stronger than us. We need them to build things. We need them to do jobs that women just physically cannot or mentally do not want to do. Men are far more likely to do dangerous jobs. They're more likely to defend us in the military. They're more likely to do jobs that bring us essential services, doing things when the temperatures fell on Christmas Eve when I was home with my family, I don't think it was mostly women out in the freezing cold repairing those power lines. Things like that we do tend to overlook. Men are often wonderful protectors. I know a lot of men who, they'll walk me to my car at night, and I'm not even just talking men I know. The guy who worked at the sandwich counter at my bodega in New York City would often walk me home around the block if it was too late. We overlook these little things and roles that men play in society that I think they should be celebrated for, and we need to do a better job of elevating the wonderful men that are out there and the good things they're doing versus focusing on the fringe gross men online. That being said, I do think, she touched on incels here, and you and I have got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, that part was interesting as well, because I think we can't remove all accountability for men. If you go down that dark path and start becoming hating women, you can't just say, well, society failed him. He's still an individual with an actor. But yeah, I do think there's truth to that like straight men are becoming lonely and these things, and they feel demonized. And I think there's some truth to that. They still have agency over their own actions. So if they become like a man-hating internet troll or a woman-hating internet troll, that's still not good and still their problem. And a lot of it is within their control in terms of not being able to get a woman or whatever. But there are, I think, some societal shifts that have left some people feeling isolated, and that's a real problem.
Well, and we know that. We know men are far less likely to have a support system. They do report far higher rates of loneliness. They are much less likely to have close male friends. They do have far higher rates of suicide. So there are serious issues going on in society that do impact men. I do think it's still their responsibility if they find themselves in these circumstances to make an effort, same as it would be for women, to go out and correct that, to work to form bonds, volunteer, go to the gym, get healthy. There are things you can do. But I thought it was interesting she touched on this point of like how men are like afraid to approach women, and even when they do on dates, they're afraid to like open car doors, open doors. I've experienced this, and I live in the deep South, and so like I grew up,
wow.
I didn't touch a door until I moved to college. My brothers and my dad lift every suitcase, open every door, take my car to get gas. Like, I didn't do these things growing up. So when I got out into the world and started dating, it was shell-shocking to me that not all men would do this. Like, I remember literally just standing outside my car door one time on a date being like, is he coming to open my door or what? Like, it was a guy from Illinois, and he'd never heard of somebody opening a car door. And when I told him, he was like, women literally yell at me for just opening regular doors these days. And so the mixed signals that you get for how to interact with women, I have compassion for them. And I hate third wave feminism at times for that. Because I'm like, quit taking chivalry from us. I like when men do these things for me. I like some things about traditional gender roles. And so I thought this was an interesting point for her to make, because this isn't hot air. This is genuinely an experience. I had another male roommate, great guy, Dylan, for years, and he was like a really good looking guy, very successful. Like, any woman would probably be happy to be approached by him. And he would never approach women in public because he was like, you just don't know. You really don't know if you're going to get me too these days. Like, you never know when it's appropriate or when it's not. Like, it's just not worth the risk. And I was just like, geez, like, that's kind of sad, because most women would probably like to be approached by, and so it's leading to this thing where like we don't have these normal interactions. You don't just meet people in public. Everybody's kind of getting pushed onto these dating apps, which have their own issues, and we're losing the ability to just interact with one another between the sexes in public, and that is not good.
No, it's not. And I want to roll this last clip that I found interesting. When they asked, do you crave men's approval?
I secretly crave men's approval.
Yeah. Men's approval has kept me safe in so many ways. Being desirable, being fuckable has kept me safe many a time. And it's no secret. I guess that's where I disagree. It's no secret that sometimes men's approval is what stands between me and safety.
So I want to get your take on this, because my first instinct, not knowing, was like, that sounds backwards. Wouldn't being more pretty make you like more likely to be targeted for sexual harassment or abuse or something? But I want to know, what do you think? Is there truth to that?
My knee-jerk reaction is the same as yours, but as I'm sitting here processing this, I'm thinking about it a little bit differently, and yes, I think that can be true, because I actually, let's reassess this. Like, looks have very little to do with rape and with sexual harassment. It's actually a lot more about power dynamics, and often those men who are predators and abusers, they target women who are weak and who they see as easy victims. Oftentimes my hunch would be those aren't the most beautiful people in the room, because really beautiful people often have a bit more power, a bit more agency, a bit more control. And I think oftentimes too, men are more intimidated by women who are more beautiful. But I want to like take the looks element out of that for a second too, and just talk about like men's approval. Because I think that's deeper than just being like visibly approved by them. I think it's about being seen as like the right kind of woman in men's eyes. And I do think that's something I've lived with. That, but I think that probably goes both ways. Like, I think men also really want women's approval, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that that's like the patriarchy. I think that's just a societal like thing that everybody deals with, where you want to be seen not only as attracted by the opposite sex, but like as desirable, and that could cut outside of sexual issues. Like, if you have an older male boss, you want him to approve of you and think you're smart and think you're capable, and like you want their approval. And I will say, like, yeah, having men's approval can keep you safe at times. It can give you better job security. It could mean that you are less likely to be targeted, not only in like a sexual assault or harassment way, but like just for meanness or like power dynamics or things of that nature. So I think upon closer examination, I do agree with her.
Yeah, I guess I just don't know, but it was an interesting moment to me that stuck out from her, and a few of the times where I thought some of these feminist side of the aisle folks had something interesting to say. I don't know about you, but my general takeaway on this is that modern feminism is kind of a mess and really ideologically incoherent. It's been captured by left-wing ideologues, and that's a shame because there's still real work that needs to be done on gender issues. A lot, actually, the more and more it seems. So I enjoyed this debate. It was food for thought for me, but it also made me a little depressed about the absolute state of like far left feminism, because yikes.
Yeah, it definitely has chaos energy. And I think that's why more and more people are sort of just sidestepping away from feminism and sort of that umbrella. We didn't cover this, but even on the panel, many of the Black women said that they feel like feminism is racist. And like, so it's like, all right, doesn't sound like this is serving anybody at this point. And I think we should maybe just get back to the actual goal here, which should be a legal apparatus where people are treated equally under the law, but also a societal education and understanding of treating people based as individuals and based on their merits. And I really think that is where the third wave should be coming from. But I think I don't know, it feels like feminism kind of is becoming a dunzo term because it increasingly just doesn't really mean anything. And it has been taken over by Marxists as a whole and people who have other end goals entirely that I don't co-sign. So it's interesting we're seeing all these like panels crop up recently sort of debating feminism and anti-feminism. It makes me cringe there are people out there who call themselves like anti-feminist, because that to me says like you don't want women to be equal. But I do understand the backlash towards feminism and why people are like opting out of.
And the reason they keep doing these panels is because people keep clicking on them. They get millions and millions of views. So clearly people want to have this conversation. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Hit that like button, consider subscribing. I'm also going to put, we reacted to another feminism debate at Vice News One. I'm going to put the link to that. It's over on Hannah's channel in the description below. Be sure to go check that out and subscribe to her channel too. And with that, we'll see you next time.